The lone ship appears. The stars burned cold above the warfront. Alien fleets stretched across the void like an iron wall, their ships glowing with weapons ready to fire. Every world in the Galactic Council had sent hundreds of warships to the border, and in the middle of this storm came only one ship. One human ship, the USS Ragnarok. The council chambers buzzed with laughter. Leaders of great empires leaned back in their crystal chairs. Mocking Earth's decision, they whispered that humans were reckless, foolish, and arrogant. Why send a single ship to face the strength of 10,000? Why not surrender quietly and avoid humiliation? From the flagship of the Zorth Dominion, Admiral Koros spat a laugh. The humans believe one ship can frighten us, he said, his voice carrying across the com channels. Let them watch how quickly it burns. Other alien captains joined the chorus, their screens filled with cruel amusement. In their eyes, humanity was still a young species, too new to the stars, too fragile to stand against true empires. Yet while the galaxy mocked, the Ragnarok drifted forward. Its hull was black as obsidian, smooth and sharp-edged. Unlike the bright, decorated ships of alien nations, the human vessel carried no banners, no glowing emblems, no shining armor. It looked almost dead in the silence of space. But inside, the ship lived, and it waited. Captain Elias Kane stood on the bridge, his eyes calm. The crew moved with steady hands, no fear in their faces. They had trained for this moment. They had been chosen for this very war, not because they were the strongest, but because they carried the secret of Earth. Captain, whispered the tactical officer, their fleets are locking weapons. On the main screen, red lines blinked across space. Each line represented the aim of a cruiser, a destroyer, or a battleship. The entire galaxy pointed its guns at a single human vessel. Still, Kane did not move. He placed his hands behind his back and stared into the void. They laugh at us, said Commander Rhea, his second in command. They think this ship is small. Her voice held no anger, only a quiet certainty. Kane turned his head slightly, his voice cold and steady. And let them laugh, Rhea, because laughter dies quickly when the cannons speak. The alien fleets advanced, their formations like a tidal wave of steel and fire. Every sensor in the galaxy recorded the sight of a single ship standing against countless enemies. On neutral worlds, ordinary citizens tuned in. Children of distant planets laughed with their elders. Some bet on how fast the humans would fall. Not one believed Earth could survive this hour. But in the deep silence of the Ragnarok's hull, something stirred. Engines pulsed with hidden power. Old codes hummed through the steel veins of the ship. The crew felt the vibration beneath their boots. They knew the truth of what they carried. This was not a normal warship. This was a weapon born from Earth's darkest designs. Still, the enemy could not see. To them, the Ragnarok was nothing more than a lone shadow in the starlight. Admiral, Koros sneered from his throne of steel. Signal the fleet, begin the advance. And like a beast with 1,000 claws, the alien armada reached for the human ship. On the bridge, Kane whispered to himself, they think we are weak. They think one ship is nothing. He leaned forward, his voice sharp as the edge of a blade. But today, the galaxy will remember. This ship, he raised his hand. Hold fire until I give the word. The crew obeyed, their hands hovering over controls. Sweat touched their brows, but not one man or woman looked away. They were not afraid of death. They were afraid only of failing the Earth. Silence stretched across the void. Tension tightened around every heart watching. The trap was set, the moment waiting. Outside, stars glittered in eternal calm. The Ragnarok floated, still and patient, its black hole reflecting nothing, absorbing all light. It looked like a grave, marker among the stars, and for many in the alien fleets, that was exactly what they believed it would become. But far beneath the silence, deep inside the human ship, the cannons slept. The storm waited, and when it came, it would shake the stars themselves. Asterisk laughter turns to doubt. The alien armada moved like a living storm. Row after row of battleships glided through the darkness, their hulls glowing with reactor fire. They closed around the Ragnarok, weapons primed, sensors locked. To the galaxy, it was a moment of comedy. To the humans on board, it was the edge of destiny. In council chambers across the stars, laughter echoed. Alien leaders leaned close to their screens, enjoying the sight of the lone human ship swallowed by a sea of enemies. "This is the end of their arrogance," hissed a Jarnet noble. "The humans should have begged for mercy instead of sending a coffin," sneered another. The chamber filled with cruel amusement. The galaxy thought it was watching the beginning of Earth's funeral. But in the silence of the Ragnarok's bridge, doubt began to creep, not into the humans, but into the enemy. The ship did not run. The ship did not hide. Instead, it held its course, calm and steady, like a predator waiting for the perfect strike. Admiral Koro of the Zorith Dominion frowned. His laughter had faded, replaced by a shadow of unease. He had fought in hundreds of campaigns, seen thousands of ships break before him, but never had he seen a single vessel hold its ground against such overwhelming force. Why do they not flee? He muttered under his breath. A voice beside him answered, nervous and sharp. Perhaps they know something we do not. On the Ragnarok, Captain Kane stood unmoved. His eyes scanned the enemy formations, his mind calm as a steel blade. The aliens thought the humans were weak, but Kane knew the truth. The Ragnarok carried a secret that the galaxy was not ready to face. "Sir," Commander Rhea spoke quietly, "their fleets are tightening. They want to crush us quickly." Her hands rested on the tactical screen, her voice steady. Kane's lips curved in the faintest of smiles. "Let them close the noose." "Rhea," he said, "the tighter they pull, the faster they choke." The alien broadcasts continued to mock humanity. Across a dozen worlds, citizens cheered at the spectacle. Children clapped their hands as alien commanders promised to tear the human vessel apart. But beneath the laughter, the first seeds of doubt were already spreading. Why did the humans send only one ship? Why was it not afraid? Why did it not even attempt to parley? One alien fleet commander, a Veth named Shore, leaned closer to his display. He watched the Ragnarok's hull carefully. It was too quiet, too dark. No panic signals, no distress codes. Instead, it drifted forward like a shadow carved from the void itself. His scales shivered as instinct warned him. "This is no ordinary vessel," he whispered. But his warning went unheard, drowned in the arrogant laughter of his peers. Back on the Ragnarok, tension hummed in the air. Every officer knew the cannons beneath the hull were not yet revealed. Every soldier knew the power hidden inside their ship was waiting, but not one of them spoke. Not one of them showed fear. They trusted their captain, and their silence was their greatest weapon. "Sir," the comms officer whispered, "enemy weapons are fully locked. They will fire soon." The bridge dimmed as red alerts flashed across the screens. Kane raised his hand slowly, his voice deep and controlled. "Hold your fire," he ordered. Not yet. The crew obeyed, their eyes forward, their hearts steady. They trusted that when the moment came, the Ragnarok would not fail them. Outside, the alien fleets glimmered like a wall of stars, energy built across their weapons, ready to unleash a storm that could burn moons to ash. Still, the lone human ship did not move. It did not turn. It did not break. It simply drifted closer, as if daring them to strike. Admiral Koro's unease grew sharper. He stared at the human vessel with narrowed eyes. The laughter from his officers no longer touched him. Something about the silence of that ship felt wrong. "Prepare full bombardment," he growled. But his words lacked the fire of confidence. Somewhere deep inside, doubt had taken root. On neutral planets, ordinary watchers noticed it too. The alien commanders who once laughed were no longer smiling. Their tones shifted, their eyes darted nervously. At their screens, the humans had done nothing, and yet already the galaxy felt unsettled. Questions spread like wildfire across the comnets. What did Earth know? What did Earth hide? Why was this single ship so calm against the might of empires? Captain Kane leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "Doubt," he murmured, "is stronger than any weapon." His crew heard the words, and they knew. The trap was not only of steel and cannon, the trap was of the mind. The aliens had laughed, but laughter was turning to silence, and silence was turning to fear. The Ragnarok drifted deeper into the storm. The fleets surrounded it. The guns of empires pointed at its heart. And yet, as the moment of fire drew near, it was not humanity that trembled. It was the galaxy. Asterisk. The first cannon roars. The silence before the storm stretched like a blade across the void. Alien ships floated in perfect formation, their cannons glowing with deadly fire. One command, and 1,000 beams of destruction would tear the Ragnarok. Apart, on every world, citizens leaned closer to their screens, waiting for the moment. The galaxy wanted to see Earth's pride turn to ash. Admiral Koro raised his clawed hand. "Fire," he ordered. His voice filled with cruel certainty, and the Armada obeyed. Beams of plasma, bolts of energy, and rivers of burning light surged across the darkness. The storm of fire was so bright it outshone the nearby stars. It was the kind of attack that had destroyed moons, leveled colonies, and broken fleets. No one expected the human vessel to survive, but when the light faded, the Ragnarok still stood. Its black hull shimmered with an unseen shield. The alien weapons had struck, but the ship had not even shifted. Gasps echoed through alien bridges. "How is that possible?" one commander whispered. "Nothing can withstand that." Another stammered. On the Ragnarok's bridge, the crew remained calm. Their screens glowed with warnings, but the captain's voice was steady. Kane's eyes never blinked. His posture never moved. "They wanted us to break," he said. "Instead, we will answer." The ship stirred. Panels opened. Across its hull, what had looked like a silent block of black steel now revealed hidden weapons. Cannon barrels slid forward, massive, glowing with crimson light. The entire galaxy watching knew in that instant this was no ordinary vessel. This was a monster, alien. Officers shouted across comms, panic rising in their voices. What are those weapons? Why are they so large? Shields at full strength. But it was too late. The Ragnarok's first cannon locked onto the nearest alien cruiser, a ship 3 times its size, armed with weapons that had destroyed worlds. Kane lowered his hand, his voice sharp as steel. "Fire." The cannon roared. A soundless beam of crimson fire erupted from the Ragnarok's side. It tore through the alien cruiser like paper. One strike, and the ship split in two, its engines exploding in a storm of fire. The shockwave spread across the battlefield, lighting the void like a newborn sun. Silence fell across the alien armada. Laughter vanished, replaced by stunned disbelief in council chambers. Leaders who had mocked humans now sat frozen, their voices caught in their throats. One shot, just one, and an empire's warship was gone. Koro's claws trembled against his command chair. That should not be possible," he whispered. His officers looked at him with wide eyes, fear replacing arrogance. Another alien commander spoke in horror. "If one shot can do this, what happens when they fire again?" On neutral worlds, citizens who had bet on the human defeat now stared in silence. The feeds replayed the moment again and again. A single cannon tearing through a warship that was supposed to be indestructible. The galaxy could not understand. How could Earth, a young world, build something so deadly? On the Ragnarok, the crew did not cheer. Their faces stayed calm, their hands ready. They knew the first shot was only the beginning. Captain Kane's voice cut through the silence. "They will come harder now," he said. But let them come, because our cannons are ready. And indeed, the Ragnarok's other cannons were awakening. Glowing barrels lined its sides, humming with deep power. What had seemed like a single weapon was only the first of many. The ship pulsed with energy, like the heartbeat of a beast ready to devour. Alien fleets scrambled to adjust, orders shouted, formations shifted, shields doubled, but the fear was already in their voices. No longer did they laugh, no longer did they mock. Now they whispered in dread. What have the humans unleashed? Koro gritted his teeth. Do not falter, he barked. They cannot fight us all. But his words rang hollow. Every commander watching knew the truth. One ship had just destroyed a vessel that was supposed to be invincible, and the Ragnarok was only beginning. The humans held their silence. They did not broadcast threats. They did not taunt. Their answer was written in fire. And the galaxy was learning a new truth, that Earth had come to the stars not to beg for respect, but to demand it. In that single moment, the war changed. The galaxy no longer saw one fragile ship. They saw a shadow that could break empires. They saw a weapon that could silence laughter, and in the darkness, the first cannon roared again. Asterisk terror across the fleet. The void was no longer silent. Soundless roar of the Ragnarok's cannon echoed in every mind that watched. The galaxy had witnessed the impossible. One human shot had reduced a mighty warship to drifting ash. And now every alien captain felt the tremor of fear. The alien armada shifted nervously. Tight formations broke as ships drifted farther apart. Commanders shouted over comms, their voices sharp with panic. Keep distance, one barked. Do not let it target us in line, screamed another. But fear moves faster than discipline. The once proud fleets began to stumble like prey, cornered by a predator. On the Zorith flagship, Admiral Koro's eyes burned with rage. He slammed his claws against the armrest, his voice cracking. Cowards! Hold formation, he snarled. But even his own officers hesitated. They had seen the Ragnarok's fire, and none wanted to be the next sacrifice. On neutral worlds, silence replaced laughter. No one mocked any more instead. Whispers spread through cities and marketplaces. Is this the true power of Earth? Have they been hiding weapons all along? Why did we ever think they were weak? Children who had laughed now clung to their elders in fear. The galaxy's arrogance was crumbling, piece by piece, on the Ragnarok's bridge. Captain Kane stood like stone. The red glow of targeting displays reflected in his cold eyes. His crew worked in silence. They did not celebrate. They did not gloat. This was not victory, yet this was only the beginning. Kane's voice carried across the bridge, calm and merciless. Target the next formation. Fire when ready. The Ragnarok's cannons awoke once more. Beams of crimson fire lanced across the void. 2 alien destroyers were torn apart in the same breath, their fragments scattering like sparks across the stars. The screams of their crews echoed in dying cum channels before silence swallowed them. Every alien ship that saw it trembled. The fear spread deeper, sharper, unshakable. Admiral Shore of the Veth Syndicate felt his scaled hands tremble. He had doubted before. Now he knew the truth. This was no single warship. This was a weapon designed to erase fleets. He whispered to his officers, "Pull us back." But his words came too late. The Ragnarok's targeting array had already locked onto his flank. "Fire!" Kane commanded. The cannon roared again. 3 ships disappeared in an instant. Where once there was steel, there was nothing but burning debris. Alien crews begged their captains for retreat. Others froze, their hands shaking too much to fire back. Panic spread, like fire across the armada. Every broadcast once filled with arrogance now carried the sound of fear. "They cannot be fought," one captain screamed. "It is death to face them," cried another. Some ships broke formation entirely, their engines blazing as they tried to flee, but running only made them easier prey. The Ragnarok's cannons cut them down one by one. Silent, merciless, unstoppable. In council chambers, The laughter had long died. Leaders stared with pale faces at the destruction. Some whispered that humanity had betrayed them. Others whispered the darker truth, that humanity had been patient, waiting, hiding, and now, with one ship, Earth was reshaping the galaxy's balance of power. On the battlefield, Admiral Koro fought to hold control. "Do not run," he roared. "Do not shame the Dominion." But even his strongest words could not hold his fleets together. Panic is stronger than pride, and in the face of Ragnarok's cannons, even empires trembled. Inside the human ship, there was no panic, only silence, only purpose. The crew fired, reloaded, recalibrated. Their motions were like a machine, perfect and precise. Kane's eyes never left the burning battlefield. They thought one ship was weakness. He said softly, "Now they learn it as judgment." The stars lit with more fire as the Ragnarok unleashed another wave. Whole squadrons vanished, their wrecks drifting like broken toys. The void that had once been filled with alien steel now became a graveyard. Each blast shook the enemies. Courage. Each silence after fire screamed louder than words. From distant worlds, ordinary citizens watching could not look away. This was no longer a war. It was a warning. Earth had chosen to speak not with words, but with cannons, and every empire now listened, because to ignore humanity's fire was to embrace death. In the void, the Ragnarok stood untouched. The storm of alien fire had ended. The storm of human vengeance had begun. The galaxy had expected laughter. Instead, it now drowned in silence and terror. Asterisk. Humanity's secret revealed. The battlefield burned. Alien wreckage drifted like broken bones across the stars. Where once an armada had stood proud, now only fire and silence remained, and in the center of it all, one human ship floated untouched. The USS Ragnarok. The galaxy had no words. Leaders in the council stared in disbelief at their screens. Generals who had laughed hours before now gripped their thrones with pale faces. Whispers spread through every chamber. What is that ship? How did the humans build it? Why did they hide such power on the bridge of the Zorath flagship? Admiral Koro trembled. He had fought wars for decades. He had seen worlds burn, seen fleets crushed, but never had he seen one vessel tear through thousands. His voice broke as he spoke. "This is no warship," he whispered. "This is a weapon of extinction." Across the void, the Ragnarok's silence was more terrifying than its cannons. It did not gloat. It did not broadcast victory. It simply waited, still and patient, as if daring the galaxy to test it again. Back on the Ragnarok's bridge, Captain Kane finally spoke. "Transmit," he ordered. His comms officer nodded, opening a channel to the galaxy. For the first time, the human ship spoke aloud to its enemies. "This is Captain Elias Kane of the United Terran Fleet." His voice thundered across space. "You wanted to see Earth's strength. Now you have seen it." The words carried weight sharper than any blade. Worlds that had mocked humans now fell into fearful silence. Every listener knew this was no bluff. The cannons had already proven the truth. Commander Rhea leaned close to Kane, her voice low. "Should we tell them?" she asked. Kane's eyes narrowed. "Yes," he said at last. "Let them understand what we carry." The Ragnarok's broadcast continued. "This ship is not a battleship," Kane said. "It is not a cruiser, not a dreadnought. It is a Deathworld engine." The galaxy froze. Every species knew the legend of Deathworlds, planets so hostile that life itself was war. Worlds where storms crushed cities, where gravity broke bones, where predators hunted. Day and night, few civilizations had ever risen from such places. None had ever turned their survival into a weapon. But now the truth was clear. Humanity had taken the fury of their Deathworld Earth and forged it into steel. The Ragnarok was not built as a ship of war. It was built as a reminder that humans were not weak, not fragile, not prey, They were the children of storms, and they carried storms wherever they went. Alien leaders whispered in horror. They built it from Deathworld science. They turned survival into a weapon. Nothing can stand against them. The arrogance of the galaxy shattered. For the first time in history, they feared humans on the bridge of the Ragnarok. The crew stood proud but silent. They had carried the secret long enough. Now it was revealed. The galaxy finally understood. This was why Earth had sent only one ship. One ship was enough. Koro slammed his claws against the screen, his rage boiling. With fear, "This cannot stand," he roared. "They cannot hold such power alone." But even as he spoke, his fleets fell apart. No one dared to advance. No one dared to test the cannons again. On distant neutral worlds, citizens stared at the broadcast. For generations they had called humans reckless, desperate, wild. Now they saw that those very traits had become weapons. One man whispered in a crowded hall, "If this is what one human ship can do, what happens when Earth sends a fleet?" The word spread like fire. Fear deepened. Captain Kane ended the transmission with a final warning. "You wanted us weak," he said. "You wanted us silent. But Earth will never kneel again." His voice cut off, leaving only static, but the silence after his words was heavier. And thunder. The galaxy now knew the truth. Humanity had been underestimated for too long. They had been mocked, dismissed, ignored. But behind their silence, they had forged a weapon to shake the stars. The Ragnarok was not just a ship. It was a declaration. A promise that the age of laughing at humans was over. And as the alien fleets pulled back, as commanders whispered in shame and fear, the name of the Ragnarok spread across the galaxy like a curse. One ship had become a legend. One ship had become a warning. And the cannons of Earth had revealed a new future. Asterisk the battle turns. The void trembled under silence. Alien fleets pulled back, engines blazing, desperate to escape the shadow of the Ragnarok. But the human ship did not let them go. Its black hull glowed with the red heat of awakening cannons. Its engines burned like the heart of a dying star. The hunter had bared its teeth. And now it would not stop. On the Zorath flagship, Admiral Koro roared in fury. "Hold the line, stand and fight," he commanded. But his words fell on deaf ears. Captains ignored his orders. Their ships breaking formation. Fear had already won. The fleets that once marched like iron walls now scattered like frightened prey. Across the galaxy, billions watched in silence. They had wanted spectacle. They had wanted to see humans crushed. Now they watched an empire collapse before one ship. Every broadcast carried the same truth. The Ragnarok was no longer defending, it was hunting. On the Ragnarok's bridge, Captain Kane raised his hand. "Advance," he ordered. The ship pushed forward, gliding through wreckage. Debris bounced harmlessly off its black armor. The graveyard of alien ships marked its path like stepping stones. "Targets locked," said the tactical officer, his voice steady. "Fire at will." Kane replied. The cannons roared again. Crimson beams cut across the void, striking fleeing. Vessels, one after another, destroyers shattered, their screams ending in silence. Even ships that tried to hide behind wreckage were found, torn apart by precision fire. Commander Rhea stood at Kane's side, her eyes sharp. "They are breaking," she said. Kane nodded once. "They laughed at us," he answered. "Now let them remember." Alien commanders shouted in panic. "Regroup, regroup," one cried. "Fall back to the second line." Another begged, but no line held. The Ragnarok punched through defenses as if they were smoke. Every volley from its cannons lit the void with fire. Every silence after fire left the galaxy holding its breath. Admiral Shore of the Veth Syndicate gave the order his heart had dreaded. "All ships retreat," he said, his voice breaking. But retreat only painted targets on their backs. The Ragnarok's sensors tracked every fleeing engine. Its cannons found them with unerring aim. One by one, The cowards died faster than the brave. On the council worlds, leaders argued in terror. Send reinforcements, one demanded. No. Withdraw, save what remains, another countered. But all knew the truth. Nothing they sent could change what had begun. The balance of the galaxy had shifted, and it would never shift back. On the bridge of the Ragnarok, the crew worked like shadows. No one cheered, no one celebrated. They knew this was not victory yet. This was a message. And that message had to be written in fire. Captain Kane's voice broke the silence. Calm and cold. Do not let them regroup, he said. Strike until they cannot rise again. The cannons obeyed. Their beams shook the stars, tearing holes. Where fleets had once stood, even moons near the battlefield quaked under the fury of their blasts. Admiral Koro slammed his claws against his throne. His rage was hollow now, swallowed by despair. This cannot be, he muttered. One ship cannot do this. But every explosion outside his viewport told him the truth. One ship could, and one ship had. On neutral worlds, the whispers grew darker. Some feared humanity, others admired them. Merchants, workers, and soldiers alike began to say the same words. If one ship can defeat empires, then Earth is unstoppable. And those words, spoken in awe and fear, spread faster than any cannon fire. The alien fleets shrank. Dozens of ships became only handfuls. Admirals who had sworn loyalty to their empires now swore to survival instead. Koro shouted one last time, "Stand with me." But when he turned, his allies were gone. Their ships vanished into warp, leaving him alone. On the Ragnarok's bridge, Kane gave his final order for the battle. Ended, he said. The cannons unleashed their full fury. The Zoreth flagship, once proud and mighty, broke apart under the storm. Koro's roar was lost in the fire. His empire's pride died with him. And when the smoke cleared, the battlefield was quiet. Only wreckage floated in the endless dark. Only one ship stood whole, untouched, unbroken. The Ragnarok had turned the battle. The galaxy had thought Earth weak. Now they saw the truth. One ship had spoken louder than 1,000 fleets, and its voice was the roar of cannons. Asterisk. The silence after fire the battlefield was quiet. Only drifting wreckage, marked where the fleets of empires once stood. Fires still burned inside broken hulls, their glow faint against the endless dark. Bodies floated among the ruins, silent witnesses to a war they had thought already won. And in the center of it all, untouched, unbroken, was one ship. The USS Ragnarok. The cannons dimmed, their barrels cooling. The engines hummed with steady calm. The ship no longer needed to fire. Its message had been written across the stars, a message so clear that not a single empire dared to laugh again. On the council worlds, silence filled the chambers. Leaders who had once mocked humanity sat frozen in shame. Some could not even meet the eyes of their peers. Others whispered bitterly, "We underestimated them. They hid this from us. They are too dangerous." But all of them knew the truth. It was too late to undo what had been done. On the bridge of the Ragnarok, Captain Kane stood with hands behind his back. His crew worked in silence, their faces calm, their duty complete. They had not come to boast. They had not come to demand applause. They had come only to prove that Earth would never be mocked again. Commander Rhea's voice broke the quiet. "It is finished," she said. Kane gave a small nod, his eyes fixed on the burning void. "No," he answered. "This is not the end. This is the beginning." The words carried weight. Every officer understood. The galaxy would never see Earth the same way again. The Ragnarok was not just a warship. It was a declaration, a warning that echoed louder than any council vote. On distant worlds, ordinary citizens whispered to one another. They sent only one ship, and it destroyed them all. The words spread from lips to ears, from homes to marketplaces. The name of the Ragnarok carried across the stars. No longer a secret, no longer a shadow, Now it was legend. In the broken remains of the Zorath Dominion, survivors transmitted desperate signals. Some begged for mercy, others cursed humanity, but none dared to attack again. The cannons had silenced their courage, and in their silence, fear grew deeper. Admiral, Shore of the Veth Syndicate, who had lived through the destruction, gave a final order. "Pull back all forces," he said, his voice heavy. "There is no victory here. There is only survival." His words marked the surrender of fleets that had once sworn to destroy Earth. Even he, a hardened veteran, understood that standing against the Ragnarok was no longer war. It was suicide. On the Ragnarok, Kane's gaze softened for the first time. He looked upon his crew, men and women who had carried the weight of Earth's secret. "You have done your duty," he said quietly. "And today, the galaxy will never forget who we are." The crew did not cheer. They did not smile. They only nodded, knowing their names would be carried in history. But they also knew the price of fear, the price of power. Earth would no longer be ignored, but it would also never again be trusted. The cannons of the Ragnarok had shaken the stars, but they had also shaken the galaxy's heart. Every empire now lived with the memory of this day. Every child who had once laughed at the thought of weak humans would grow up with a different story, the story of one ship that defied them all. Kane gave his last order for the battle. "Cease fire," he said. "Prepare to return." The Ragnarok turned slowly, leaving behind only wreckage and silence. It moved through the graveyard of ships like a shadow through fog, untouched, unstoppable, unforgettable. And so the galaxy learned. They had wondered why humanity sent only one ship. They had laughed, mocked, and scorned. But when the cannons roared, their laughter died. When the silence came after fire, fear remained. The Ragnarok had spoken, and the galaxy would never forget the voice of Earth. Asterisk.